U.S., Canada, Southeast Alaska, 30%, Vancouver Island, Canada, 18%, 48%. And what Ron didn't say, I know I've heard before, but in years of low productivity, that may mean that all adult fish in excess of spawning gulls have been harvested before the fish get in the mouth of the Grace Harbor estuary. All of them. Now let's add to that Cornwall Indian Nation. It's a federally recognized tribe established under U.S. v. Washington, the Volt decision. They have the right of up to 50% of returning adult fish. They haven't taken that, but if you took, we got 48% off the top, U.S. Canada, you took the balance of 52%, half of that should have gone to the tribes, and they don't take that much. But that would put you over 70% at that point. Continue, Chehalis tribe. They were given through a lawsuit, the United States, Chehalis et al. Versus the state of Washington. Fish allocation, it's unknown exactly. It could be somewhere between 1% and 6%. How much they actually take. The amazing thing, it is off of the non-treaty sector. So, kind of getting to a bottom line is, my eyebrows just raised, the balance of 5% for non-treaty net and sports fishermen, that is simply amazing. And that's built, by the way, on 2001 through 5 crude years. There's a couple other constraints. I've heard it mentioned today, but there's a very modest hatchery supplementation in the basin. Primarily, the two significant ones are the cohos of both Chehalis and Humtulips. And there's a sizable amount of uncertainty in the pre-season abundance setting. And that's why in-season ability to adjust is really important. So as a committee, we had to figure out how we're going to proceed, where we're going to go. And there's a common thread that you wove through the 3 public hearings that we've heard you talk about. We've also heard from the staff. And that thread is conservation. And that thread is woven by both you, the commercial, and you, the recreational fishermen. That conservation is paramount. We must meet escapement goals. And I've kind of kept tally. The first time I have a rough figure, that was a third of you raised it. Last public hearing, I counted closely. 20 people testified, 12 raised conservation and meeting the escapement goals. And today, out of 22, 10. So, I just read you, again, I got this a couple days ago. It doesn't matter whether it was recreational or commercial. What it says is, I think, what matters. Chair Wecker was to thank the Commission for their service and dedication to the conservation of salmon and Grace Harbor fisheries. And here's the important point. Please consider the following subjects regarding this matter with the highest of priority. First, escapement. We must meet escapement goals each and every year. This is imperative to the survival of the fish that swim and spawn in these waters. Any type or length of fishery should always be secondary. I am well aware that this could mean on lean years that we do not have a directed fishery by anyone, and if that's what it takes, then so be it. So that is what guided our committees. It was our foundation. It was where we wanted to go. Against this backdrop of complexity, we worked with the department staff. We built a series of 5 recommendations we want to walk you through to clarify, refine, and enhance key elements of the policy. And then really this is all about policy. And we're giving guidance to. And so the 3 areas that we focused on, number 1, and that was strengthened conservation guidance. Number 2, support proposals to reduce gear conflict. And number 3, refine options for sharing between recreational and commercial fisheries. So Chairman, turn it back to you to go through the recommendations.
Okay,
We will kind of tag team the recommendations. I'm up first. A stated purpose of the draft policy is to, quote, advance conservation and restoration of wild salmon, unquote. The December draft policy includes multiple principles directed at achieving this purpose. In addition, each species-specific section states that, quote, fisheries will be managed with the intent of achieving escapement goals, unquote. And we recommend the following additions to strengthen the conservation element of the draft policy. Recommendation number 1. The Fish Committee recommends lending policy support to the department's efforts to separately manage Chinook and coho salmon returns to the hump tulips and Chehalis River. We suggest that adding the following language to the guiding principle as follows. Quote, the department shall seek agreement with the Quinault Indian Nation to manage fisheries with the intent to meet the Chinook and coho salmon spawning goals for the Hump Tulips River and the Chinook and coho spawning goals for the Chehalis River, unquote. We are absolutely convinced that without the concurrence of the co-managers and without mutual cooperation, it will be an extremely difficult task.
Thank you, Chairman Mencken. Before I go into the Fish Committee's second recommendation, I did want to add a couple of things. As you heard, the Fish Committee spent quite a bit of time looking at this. We've met several times, and I have, as Commissioner Schmitten said, reviewed every email that's come in and reviewed the comments carefully, listened to the testimony here today. And I will say too, we've debated the issue amongst the Fish Committee. Some issues we've had lively discussions and debates. On conservation, however, we've had no debate. And I think just to make sure that I get it right, I'm going to read the recommendation and the rationale and basis for it. So bear with me. The Fish Committee recommends including in the draft policy a provision to institute precautionary management measures when spawner goals are not achieved. We recognize that improving the status of the Chehalis fall Chinook in particular will be challenging. We also recognize that we cannot anticipate all factors that will affect the number of salmon spawners in the Grays Harbor in future years, and that adaptive management will be essential to achieve our conservation objectives. We recognize that these measures will likely result in reduced fishing opportunities, while the abundance of these fish is restored. We recommend adding the following language to the adaptive management section of the draft policy, and this is the recommendation, and I will quote it. As a component of the annual fishery management review, the department shall assess if spawner goals were achieved for Chehalis spring Chinook, Chehalis fall Chinook, Hump Tulips fall Chinook, Chehalis coho, Hump Tulips coho, and Grays Harbor chum salmon. If the number of natural origin spawners was less than the goal in 3 out of the last 5 years, beginning in 2008, the department shall implement the following measures. First, the predicted fishery impact for that stock in WDFW managed fisheries in the Grays Harbor Basin will not exceed 5% of the adult return. And secondly, if a spawner goal for fall Chinook salmon is not achieved, the Grays Harbor control zone off of the mouth of the Grays Harbor will be implemented no later than the second Monday in August and continue until the end of September. And that's the second recommendation of the Fish Committee on Conservation. End quote.
Chair, under the heading of promote orderly fisheries, reduce gear conflict, and achieve sharing objectives, recommendation 3 follows. The Fish Committee recommends the addition of the following guidance to the guiding principle 8, to promote orderly fisheries, reduce gear conflict, and achieve sharing objectives. And I quote for the record, Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife managed commercial gillnet fisheries, fishing areas or aggregated areas, for example, areas 2A, 2B, 2D, areas 2C, shall be scheduled, if possible, so that any given calendar week, there are a minimum of 3 consecutive days when no treaty or state-managed commercial fishery occurs. End of quote.
Thank you, Chairman Megan. I'd like to say a couple things in advancing my recommendation. I want to appreciate the participation of the public in this. The letters and emails and text messages and things that we get are really, really important. And like my colleagues said, we do read them. Sometimes it takes a long time to get through them, but it is appreciated. Second item is I just want to acknowledge that the effort that this group of 4 has put forward. Not only have we met any number of times, we've had several conference calls, and these other 3 guys that I work with are just gems to work with. They're dedicated, knowledgeable, and put forth a lot of energy to try and make the right decision in all cases. Lastly, I want to thank the staff for helping and guiding us through this process with the scientific data that we need to try and make rational decisions. The Fish Committee recommendations. We recommend, this is number 4, in consideration of the conservation concerns for Chehalis fall Chinook salmon, the ability of the recreational fishery to release wild Chinook with minimal mortality, and the importance of the recreational fishing industries to the state's economy, the Fish Committee recommends that the policy prioritize the use of available fishery impacts for fall Chinook for the recreational fishery. The priority is consistent with existing policy direction provided by the Commission for Puget Sound and Columbia River fisheries. We suggest adding the following language to the policy draft, and I quote, "The fishery management objectives for fall Chinook salmon in priority order are to 1. Achieve spawner goals, 2. Provide meaningful recreational fishing opportunities, and 3. Limit commercial fishery impacts to the incidental harvest of fall Chinook during fisheries directed at other species." End quote.
Chairman, the final recommendation comes under the heading of refined sharing options. It's recommendation 5. The Fish Committee recommends returning the impact rates of the commercial fishery to the levels prior to the implementation of the revised management framework in 2009. We suggest replacing the commercial recreational sharing tables in the draft policy with the following language. Quote, WDFW managed commercial fisheries in Grays Harbor Basin shall have the following impact limits. Areas 2A, 2B, 2D, impact rates of less than 0.8% on Chehalis fall Chinook. Area C, impact rates of less than 1.2% on hump tulip fall Chinooks. Chair, a little explanation, what does that mean? And although commercial impacts are relatively small,